Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today, this is our second session of this workshop. So let's start here. Yes, so everybody can see the presentation. Yeah. Okay. So this is the second session. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. In this workshop about how to protect our crops in our garden. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Well, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Christian Acosta, agricultural educator from Cornell Cooperative Extension in Allegheny County. So in the first session that we had, so we were just seeing just some introduction about how to start this process of protecting our crops. So usually we used to think that protecting a crop is just spraying some chemicals or doing something like this, and that's it. But there is a lot of things that we can do in this process of protecting our plants and growing healthy plants and healthy soil. And so let's start this one with just an example like this. So has it happened to you that you start just with a plant? So here is just a tree, but this can be with any of our vegetables and some annual plants. And so just that we keep every year planting. So we have just healthy plants that we can start from seeds, or we can bring from the greenhouse, or maybe a gift or some. Well, we start our plants, we start our garden, and everything looks nice, looks great, everything is green, and we have healthy plants. We have low or just no, we cannot realize that there is some insects or diseases in this one. And when something is on the crop, it's just easy to control. Just even not with chemicals, just sometimes with just the rain, it can control aphids, for example, and it's easy to control. So this, after a couple of years, it can be 2 years. Well, this is just an example. This is not that every 3, 6, and 9 years it's gonna be happening something like this with our crops. And it's just an example. But I mean, after a couple of years, it can be 2, 3, 5 years, we start just realizing that there are some spots that every time we are planting, there is some spots of, this can be insects, this can be some disease, this can be something like, we realize that something is going in there, but the plant is still healthy. There is nothing to worry about it, and it's still easy to control. And so isn't okay, like we can just optional just leave the plant like that, and it looks like nothing happened. No, it's not anything to be overwhelmed about the plant. But after even 3, 4 more years that we keep planting the same in our garden year by year, or having these trees, and after a long time, so we start realizing that there is something happening in there. uh, every year or every time, the same pest that in the beginning it was not a problem, now they are growing more. And so now it's not just some spots, now there is more spots in the plant, and the plant start turning yellow or another color and showing different symptoms, different colors, losing the leaves, and is like more susceptible to even the animals. So it's like the plant is becoming weak, or something is going on with my garden. So sometimes we used to think that is maybe the seeds are becoming bad, or sometimes we hear like, oh no, this, I am applying even a product, and this product is not working anymore. So I need to go and look for something different, or those seeds are terrible. I'm not buying more seeds from that greenhouse or from that company. Or well, we can think about this, but we plant again from another kind of seeds or another kind of plants, and we still have this kind of problem. So it's the presence of pests is more frequently, and the old products is like, it seems like it's not working. So after even more years, now we have that every time that we plant something in there is easily just getting disease or insects. Well, any kind of things can be happening in the plant, and just after long time. So it's like something like this. We plant something and it's terrible. It's just like a hot spot, and sometimes people just quit and just say, no, I'm not planting anything like that. Is the seeds or it's just the soil. And well, something that is right about this is about the soil. So something is going in there that every time that we put a new plant, or even the current plants that we have, something is happening with the plants, and every time it's difficult to control. And even with chemical control is not the same. Just it just seems like it's lightly being effective. So probably if we are in this growing our garden year by year, so probably we have seen this kind of problems, right? And if we don't have this kind of problems yet, well, maybe in the future. So usually we hear that all these problems are related just to monoculture. So what is this word about? This word just means that it's planting the same crop, the same plants every time for a long period of time. So it's just one type of crop or variety in the same land for long time. So usually we hear that this is just related to the monoculture. So in the other side, we have the polyculture, that is two or more different plants being in the same land. So of course, each one has the pros and the cons, that, as we can see here. So we have in the monoculture, of course, the land is just for one type of plant. So we can see increased the production. We can see that it's easier to do the management because we don't have to be checking and reading and doing the parameters, the requirements for multiple crops. We just have one. And in the other side, so the polyculture, so for the monoculture, this is right, this is good. But in the polyculture, as we can see here, so we have more diversity of plants, but it means that the production is reduced because now the land is shared with different different types of plants. And with the monoculture, something that is bad about is what we have seen, that this disease and pest resistance, the soil damage, there is no diversity. We have just one type of plant. And with this, with the time, as we were seeing in the example, so we have these kind of problems that every time it looks like being worse about pests, about management, about diseases. So even the environment changes because it's not just normal that we have the same kind of plants year by year and just low diversity in natural conditions. We always have lots of plants and diversity around. And with the polyculture, this is what is it's good. Those are the pros. So it's the low risk for the pest resistance because every time it's changing the soil nutrients. So we don't have these kind of problems that every year, every time it's the same plants taking the same kind of nutrients. And there is, so no, in the polyculture, there is always something different. So the balance in the nutrition of the soil is being just naturally, the natural, we can call Mother Earth, just the nature, it's so wise that just in natural conditions, this happens just by itself. And the equilibrium in nutrients and pest and control, natural control, and everything is just like in perfect equilibrium. So of course, with this polyculture, agricultural techniques, we don't have this. We don't have to use a lot of pesticides, and so it's less use of pesticides. In the same way, we are helping with the environment. So after just seeing something like this, so which one we think that it's better? Which one, if you have the option to just have a land and grow whatever you want, which one would you prefer? So let's hear some.
I would prefer the one on the right.
I like the greenhouse too.
Yep, me too. Somebody else is going to take care of it for me, though.
Well, so maybe we can think that this one to the right is the best option. So that's why we're here for a long time, and that's what it looks. But if we have like we are seeing now, so overpopulation, a huge demand of food, and we have just a land to produce, so we need just something like this, right? Even if this is just this has a high cost about pest, about management, about the environment. So here there is not like a good one and a bad one. So everything is that depends of the point of view. So if we see from the point of view from the environment and the nature, so of course having polyculture and having eco-friendly crop, eco-friendly agriculture, so it's better, right? But in the same time, if we have a high demand, so the monoculture looks like it's so far just one of the options to produce a lot of food in less time and taking advantage of the land available to produce. So in this case, it's everything about the points of view. And something that we cannot realize is that if we even have multiple crops growing, like in the polyculture, we can fall in these kind of problems of pest resistance and having these kind of problems, issues we can have. We can say that it's issues for us, that we are for humans, that we are growing the plants, because we have this, for example, we have every year tomatoes, bok choy, well, 5 different plants in our land. And year by year, we're planting the same kind of crops. So with the time, we're starting with these kind of problems because we have this same kind of the same crops, the same kind of plants. So they are taking the same nutrients, and there is again a problem with the equilibrium about nutrients on the soil. So instead of just picking just or this, having like one or the other one, instead we can just do something so great and that helps a lot. That is called crop rotation. So what is crop rotation? We can, the definition is just simple. That is just the practice to grow in different, as you can see here. I don't know how you can see the screen, because I feel that just the videos are better. Well, the crop rotation, so I'm sorry about this. It's just the practice of growing different crops in succession on the same, it can be the same land or the same substrate, because we don't need to have a huge space, just acres of land. We can do crop rotation even in our house, just in pots, Or when we have hydroponics, we can do crop rotation. It doesn't matter the land or the substrate where we are growing our plants. So why to rotate crops? So as we were saying in the beginning, we need just to avoid this kind of problems with pests, with diseases, and have healthy plants. But it's not just about the plants, it's about the quality of the products, the quality of the plant, the food that we are growing. And the quality is related and is very important about what is in the soil. So a good crop rotation preserve the long-term soil health. So as I mentioned in the first session, the soil is just not dirt. There is an ecosystem living in there. So there is a universe being there about microorganisms. Is not only dirt, like I said, there is a lot of nutrients. There is air being in there, organisms and microorganisms, and everything works like in a symbiotic relation. And this is why it's so important to take care of our soil. Even if it's just something that we have small raised bed that we have in our garden or in our even indoors sometimes. So we need to take care about this one to have healthy plants. So these crop rotations, when we have different types of plants, every time, every year, or every cycle, this helps to keep the incidence of pests and diseases just low, keep the nutrients in balance in this substrate. So this means good fertility, and this has this equilibrium with the microorganisms living in there. And this improves, in some cases, we can even improve the quality, the texture of the soil. So this is why I have here this example with cassava or yucca, if you have heard about this one. Because, for example, we want to grow corn or plantain, or well, plantain if we have the conditions to grow that. That is warmer. But well, here I want just to plant something in my garden or a land that I have in my farm, but the soil is just too hard, is compact. So this happens many times, and something that helps a lot is a crop like this, like cassava, because this is cassava used to develop. So that's what we are seeing here, and this is what we are getting from this crop, and it's the roots. So the roots are thick, and they are strong enough to just go through very compact and hard soil, and this helps to change the texture of the soil. So in some areas, when there is this problem about the soil being just hard, just compact, before the crop, the principal crop, for example, corn, they used to plant cassava. So after the cassava, the soil is going to be better. So we start from something like this, and now we have a better quality of soil. So it's better just to go and plant now our corn or any other crop that we want to plant. So in this way, we can just look what can help in this crop rotation, because it's not so simple like, okay, so if this is just moving different crops, so now we have onions, next time I'm gonna plant carrots, and if I have some kind of problems, so if we have problems on the soil, so we have to be checking about this, and we are seeing this in the next slides. So there is some rotation strategies. That is what I was mentioning before about picking what kind of crop we can just pick, what decision is the best to make. So we can start just rotating by plant family, for example. And about plant family, So this is a common mistake that just because we don't know about that. So this used to happen before even I started my university and when we were just planting something on the garden. And it was like, okay, we are gonna to be rotating crops. So if this year I have tomatoes, so next year I'm gonna have eggplants or potatoes, or so we think that we are rotating the crops because it's something different. But if we just read about this, so we realize that we have tomatoes and eggplants, they are from the same family. So we can have different kind of plants, but they are the same family. So we can have the same problems with the pest, with the pest resistance, and with the insects being there. So after a time, it's like, what is happening? It's still the same problem. So we have the same plants, even if they look different. Same with the cucumber. We cannot just be planting a cucumber and then pumpkin because they are from the same family. Same with peppers, same with like we are seeing here, the potatoes and then planting peppers. We can do rotation by the plant part harvest. So this is about the previous example that I was saying about the onion and then growing carrots, because the harvest part is the roots. It's what it's under the soil. So we can start rotating. Just for example, in one cycle, crop cycle, we can have the potatoes, onion, yucca, for example, carrots. And the next cycle, we can have tomatoes or something that we are harvesting from a different part of the plant. We can do rotation by the nutrient requirements, and this is one of the important ones because we can have, for example, all these crops that we are seeing here, the tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers, and usually the nutrient requirements can be very similar. So if we are using the same kind of crops, so we are taking nutrients from the soil, and after a time the soil is just in need of something different, and we start seeing the plants turning yellow, turning different colors, like we saw in the first session, where the deficient of nutrients, so it's present in there. So what is happening if I'm rotating? Well, the plants are taking the same kind of nutrients. So this is why there is not the equilibrium on the soil. And something good to have about this crop rotation is including legumes and cover crops. So it's something common sometimes just to see that we are planting corn. So between the corn, we can plant a soybean or just green beans or any kind of beans. So this helps first to reduce the pest incidence. Sometimes if our main crop is corn, for example, we can just attract some pests, some insects, just planting beans in the middle. And there is no problem because there is not the competition for space, for nutrients. And even these kind of plants like the beans, they help with the nitrogen cycle to they help to keep alive the bacteria, so that these bacteria are helping with the nitrogen cycle. And this is good for the corn crop. So we can start playing with these relations between the nature, and this can be with the plants family. We can be just, and I say playing because sometimes we need to just check about what are the conditions of my farm and what can I plant here. So what works for my neighbor that it's far, and the next farm is not the same. This can be useful for me, but the same technique sometimes is not the same. That can work for them, but the same technique cannot work for me. And in the same way, something that works for me in this farm, in this area, with this environment, with these plants, is something that cannot work for someone in another farm. So this is why we need to just be doing our rotation and just being attentive to what is happening in the ground, what is the response of our crops. So now the question is like how to rotate. So I would like to hear so about what I have been saying, like who is related or who has some experience about just changing the crops with the time, just being like doing this even without knowing about this, because sometimes we can be rotating crops even if it's not our intention. It's just like, oh no, I'm just tired to grow potatoes and next time I'm gonna grow pumpkins, for example. So far with what we have seen, who is related or the who is just related with this term?
I was surprised that you, okay, I've never heard of the concept of rotating by the harvestable plant part. So I'm a little skeptical that you can plant potatoes one year and then put another solanaceous crop like tomatoes in that field the same time. Or sorry, not the same time, but the next year. So other than that, I have experienced and read that you shouldn't have cucurbits or anything, you know, your squash, pumpkins, etc. You should have 3 years between those. So when I use containers at my house, so I do try to rotate my cucurbits with my tomatoes. I don't have a lot of diversity here. And that works for me, at least every other year.
Okay, thank you.
This is my first year, so I have no at all. So thank you. I will use this in the future.
I usually just move things around in my garden. Just sometimes when I think about it, I look up because I don't know which families belong to which ones, you know, on some of those. So I look them up and then try and rotate them around. I'm not as good as I should be, but I'm learning. I'm working on it.
So I just know because my brother-in-law is Joe Kent of Kent Farms, and they grow a ton of pumpkins and corn and what's the little plant? The little alfalfa? Alfalfa and what's the other little seeded plant that they feed the cows? Anybody?
Well, I don't.
And I want to say it's at
I
least.
need more information, Jeff.
I know, sorry.
Little plant doesn't help me.
Well.
No idea.
I think they're on like a 4-year rotation around the farm, because when my dad brought his camper up there with a beautiful view of the Southwest Valley that they have, that year was the year that Ed decided to put the corn right in front, and it obstructed his entire view. And that's been at least like 3 or 4 years now. So I knew that they did that. That's all I know, as you would.
Yeah, thank you. So as I was saying, sometimes we are rotating or we see that someone is rotating, but we don't have this term in our mind. So this is very important. We have seen how keeping just the same crops can bring some resistance about pests, about diseases, and the nutrition of the soil. And now that I remember Laura's comment, so when we rotate by the part of the plant is, I will put just an example when we have problems with nematodes on, for example, an onion crop that they are sometimes it depends the variety, they can be susceptible to nematodes. So if we plant the next crop, it's gonna be carrots or it's gonna be another bulb. So it's easier or to have this kind of problems. So it's not like, yes, you are going to have this problem, but this can be susceptible to get this problem if we are having nematodes affecting our onions or our crops that they are under the ground. So this is why we can just rotate and keep for a long time or short time. We are gonna see how long time we need to wait for in some with some problems, so with some pathogens, with some diseases. So this is why sometimes we cannot have problems about nutrition or about any other thing. So if it's a pest like this, so we can just change the plant, and now we are harvesting from another part of the plant. So now the question is like how to rotate. So the first number one advice, the first step is just planning a rotation. So just if we have a farm or we have just some pots in our house or a rice bed, or well, we start checking where are we going to grow and if I can divide the land, or if I need to plant just only one crop. So how I'm gonna be doing the rotation. So first start thinking about this. So instead of just starting with something and then over the time just trying to rotate in something like this, it's better just having something, having a plan for the rotation. So if we have land enough to do something like we are seeing here in this example, so if we can have some sections, so we have this land, if we can have even different lots, make us a subdivision of the land and have even multiple crops growing around this farm or this area, and we can be rotating at the same time. So, well, before we can do this about rotating same time and having same time, for example, here corn and here another crop and here another crop and here another crop, but we need to take in mind what we have seen before about families, about the susceptibility of the plant, about pests, and do our own research before start planning something like this. Just check every group of plants. So when we were talking about families, so here we have, so even if you want, well, this information is going to be available in our website and the Cornell Cooperative Extension Allegheny County website. So, but if you want, you can take from now, for example, just a screenshot of this. And this is how I can rotate, how you can rotate about families. So if we have this family here, for example, Poaceae is about corn. If we have one of the famous one, the Solanaceae, it's potato, tomato, eggplant, peppers. So we know that we cannot rotate in the same family. So this is one of the common problems when we have about rotation, because we don't know what is the family. So here we have these examples, and these are the names of the family, usually the pronunciation and everything. This is from the Latin. So here we have the Cucurbitaceae, And for example, all the squash, melon, watermelon, cantaloupe. So sometimes we cannot remember the family, each family, but we can just see and realize, for example, here, the cucurbitaceae. So we have the squash, cucumber, cantaloupe, a pumpkin, watermelon. And if we see the plants just on the garden, we realize that they have similar, just the shape of the leaves, similar growth patterns. And they have even the way that they grow their flowers and then the fruits and everything, it's pretty similar. Is sometimes it's just a little tricky to recognize about just checking just by eye. For example, with the potato and tomatoes, because we have different harvesting parts. So it's like, well, okay, about this, this can be a little challenging, but usually we can see that they are pretty similar. So we can start just thinking about, we need something different for the next period, the next crop. So this is just a couple examples if you want just to take the screenshot. If not, this is going to be available online. And if not, if there is something that is not here and I want to plant something that is not in these examples, for example, I just want to plant sunflowers. So with the next time, to rotate with something that for the next time, so I can just start reading about this. There is a lot of information. It's so good about the technology and years of research that many scientists have been working so hard to have this information available for all of us. And always we can just check what is the family of this plant, what can I use the next time for then my next crop. So here we have, okay, so now how can we can use the cover crops that I was mentioning about, that little example about the beans and the corn, for example. So we can just leave the as a residuals of the previous crops, or we can just incorporate this crops association about corn and beans and having two different plants at the same time. So in this way, we don't have like a competition between the crops, and one can help the other one. So the benefits about having the cover crops is about increase the organic matter, for example, as same like when we are using the mulch, so we can reduce the soil evaporation and keep the soil with temperature when it's too high, the temperature, so that can help to keep a little cooler temperature on the soil for our plants, and just protect against weeds, for example, that just reduce the growth of weeds. So in the equilibrium with the nutrients. So this is something that is not mandatory in the crop rotation, but it's just something that we can do for this process. So I wanted to ask, I wanted to stop here and ask if there is some questions about this so far, because there is like a lot of information that is too short time to just try to put everything together. So I'm sorry if there is some
So
kind
far,
of
so good,
question.
Christian. I don't have any questions so far.
Okay. Let's continue here. Okay, so we can continue. And another of the ways that we can start rotating is about the compatibility, and it's well, we can just be thinking about the soil, about our land, about the families, about what part of the plant I'm going to be harvesting. And we can think about all of this. But another thing that we need to just be researching before do the rotation is about what is compatible with what. So there are some reports, so not all the crops are, there is a lot of information about the compatibility with all the crops, but there is about the principal ones, yes. And it's, for example, this one, we have cabbage, and for the next season, we want to plant tomatoes. So there are research reports that they say that they realize that after planting cabbage, if you plant tomatoes, you are going to have a lower yield about tomatoes. So this is about the condition of the soil after a crop. So like I was mentioning before, as I was mentioning before, every crop, they have the nutrients requirements. So in the same way, they can just leave some some residues, they can take some nutrients, and this is why sometimes we have this kind of problem. So if we, for the next crop, we have tomatoes. So we have the tomatoes. So the nutrient requirements from the tomatoes, if there is not a balance in there, and we don't have soil analysis, if we don't know what is happening down there, so our tomatoes, they are not going to have the same kind of nutrients. They are not going to have enough nutrients to develop good tomatoes and have a good performance, a good yield. So this is another good thing that we can do our own research before doing our rotation to have a better decision about what is the next time. And it's something like this. So just research, do a reading, and read about our plants, and read about the next crop that we have in mind. So what are the requirements for nutrients, for water, for everything? So just a little, we don't need just to do a huge research or reading a lot. We just with a basic reading about the topics, about the crops that we want to plant, so we can just realize what is good with what. Like, for example, we have the cabbage, so we can plant corn for the next time, and this is going to be good if we want to plant for the next time we want to plant the tomatoes or potatoes, for example. So this is something that we can have in the middle, something different, and in this way we are just like breaking here this result. So if we have in the middle now, like corn, the sweet corn, the soil is going to be ready. It's going to have enough nutrients, and it's going to be ready to have like potatoes or some solanaceae. In this way, it's like it's a win for the plant, and it's a win for us to harvest. This is another, so let's hide this. This is another of the tables that you can just take a screenshot right now, or just take notes, because we hear about, okay, it's good about to rotate, and sometimes we can rotate and wait for 3 years for some crops. Sometimes we hear that it's good about just 2 years or 3 years, and then you can start again. But if we have some diseases, some problems, there are some kind of microorganisms, because it's not only about fungus or only about bacteria. This can be about virus, fungus, bacteria, protozoa. So we have different diseases, different microorganisms that they can survive for a long time in the soil. So like in this case, we have one of the, when we are studying plant pathology, we know that Fusarium is one of the most challenging microorganisms in the agriculture studies. And this one, as we can see here, they can be they can be just there in the soil, and they can be susceptible. The crop can be susceptible for fusarium disease, fusarium rot, up to 8 years. So even if we just wait for 2 years and we plant again, we rotate and plant again, we can have this problem, for example, here with asparagus. So here, as we can see, there are some of them, like just the black rot in pumpkins or the root rot in the parsnip, that they are just 2 years. Some kind of diseases, they just, with 1 year, it's enough. But in same time, we can have some pathogens that they can just last for long time on the soil. But it doesn't mean that that you cannot do anything about this and that you cannot plant for 8 years. Of course, always there is some control methods, and there are products, just chemical products, biological products, even homemade remedies for this, to have this management for these microorganisms, and you can be just doing this. But just to take in mind that sometimes we can have up to 8 years, 7 years, or even more years with pathogens being just there waiting on the soil. So that's another factor that we can have. So before moving to the next step, that is irrigation system optimization, that is related to this one, and it's very important to sorry, I still have this thing with the bar with chats. So far, what questions do we have about crop rotation, and taking in mind about families, about all these that we have seen so far?
I don't have any questions at this point.
So
I'm good.
breaking up the pest cycle in the ground, what about crop rotation for similar, for crops that have similar above ground? You know, Colorado potato beetle, or
Here,
you know, even the striped cucumber beetle, or something that can overwinter and come back year to year. I don't want to take away if you're going to talk about this later.
So about how to the rotation about some pests.
So with insect pests, if you're going to be rotating to avoid perpetuating a problem year to year, is there a similar table that would let us know how many years should be between crops with insect pests as well, like that nice one that you had with the fungi diseases?
Well, I put the some diseases, the microorganisms, because with the big organisms like the insects or some animals, we can just break this resistance is easily just moving or removing the plant. So if there is not a place for the pest to develop, to eat, to keep their life cycle, so it's easier to control about pest than some pathogens, like, because in the case of the microorganisms, they have multiple ways to survive, about chemicals, about remedies, about many, even the environmental conditions like summer, winter, and they can be there for a long time. So with the insects, with the pest, some pest, we can just, with most of the pest, just changing the environment. It's easy to, not that easy sometimes, but it's easier to control than the microorganisms. So this what I didn't put like these kind of tables to wait for some time to plant again these different crops. So there is a lot of examples, information, what I am gonna think about. For example, I have beans, and then I have problems with aphids because I have planting beans and then green beans and then soy, and I have always, and then tomatoes. So I always have aphids there in the garden, but they are sometimes just with the rain, just when there is high precipitation. This is a way to control aphids too, just with the irrigation system. That is what we are gonna see. We can control aphids, or we can apply some home remedies or chemical products, or just removing the plants and planting there something totally different, and we don't see resistance about aphids on the ground. So it's easier for them just to or die or move to another areas and not being there in our land.
Gotcha. Thank you. Good answer.
Thank you. Some more questions we have. Oh, it's almost 12. And so this is the last part of today's session, and it's a short one, but it's very important, like I was mentioning in this answer, like, because just with the irrigation system, we can just, well, we have multiple benefits, but one of these ones is prevent and protect our crops about pests and about diseases. So the irrigation is just this simple, just simple like this. That is just the process about moving water in an artificial way to a specific land. So we have different types of irrigation systems. These are the common ones that we always see around not only these areas, just wherever you go around the world, you used to see these irrigation systems. And the first one is the gravity fed application. So this is just when we know that we have a lake, for example, or we are close to a river, and we just through channels or in some way, and this is up to the people. If they have even the machines and everything, they can build some channel or just take from with a hose, or in multiple ways, just moving the water and just taking advantage of the natural way that the water is moving. The risk about this one is just the easy movement of microorganisms, and how easy it is just to have diseases that they come from a long distance. So this is a common problem when we have like multiple farms, and we have a problem in one of the farms here, and then these microorganisms, and at the end of after a couple of years or months, they are affecting all the farms in that they are taking the same kind of water. So this can be a hot spot. So a hot spot for diseases is just these spots where we have water with a lot of microorganisms, and they can just be affecting our crops. The second one is just the sprinkle irrigation, and it's one of the common one. And so far, so from years ago, this was like the favorite irrigation system, because we used to have the believing in the past that to make sure that the plant and that the crop is totally it has the right irrigation, the right water levels. So it has to be totally wet, all the part of the plant. But in this way, we can just break the plants depending on the pressure and the drop size, and the risk is to generate the microclimates for the pest to be there. And we have the micro irrigation that is, so far it's like the best option, but this is a little expensive sometimes, and this needs more planning about about this, and not all the crops works in the same way. So we need to check. It's not the same providing water for a rice crop than a corn crop. So this is another thing before starting our plants, starting doing our rotation, just checking what our plants needs and what is the water requirements for the plants. So this with the second one, with the sprinkler irrigation, usually we have these kind of problems, and it's about breaking the tissues of the plant. And in this way, we are just naturally, the plant cannot be susceptible to pathogens or some diseases. But sometimes just by ourselves, just the human's fault to open the door. I always mention about like opening the door for the microorganisms to come into the plant, because just with the irrigation system, just watering the plants, we can be opening this door for microorganisms to develop diseases and create problems in our crops. And it's about the size of the water drop. So if we need to use the sprinklers, so we need to read a little bit more about this, about what is the size of the water drop and the pressure that I am providing for my crop. So if this is, for example, 400 nanometers micros, so we have a thick water drop, and this can break easily the leaves. For example, if it's some very susceptible, tender leaves, so we can break the leaves. And as we can see, it's not covering. It's not totally covering the leaf. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I have been with this weather changes. I have been with my throat.
No worries. Take a drink of water.
That's yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
Well, continuing about this, when we have a fine spray, so we can cover more part of the leaf, but we still have this risk about breaking the leaf. It depends the pressure, and if we are spraying, for example, some kind of pesticide, or that we need a good coverage. So this is not the best option neither. So the finest, like this one, is just like an aerosol. It's gentle with the plant, and it's covering the leaf. So in this way, we need to read about this, and this is just about the size of the sprinkler. Just if we need to use an irrigation system like this. If not, we can use the drop irrigation, the micro irrigation. And if it's just in our garden, so we use is by hand or just with the hose, and just take in mind that we need to be gentle with the plants too, and not opening the door for microorganism, and that not every time we need to be we don't need the leaves and all the plant to be completely soaked in water. So yeah, about this, the recommendation, it's always check your crop irrigation requirements. What system works better for me, like I was saying, and the example that I put in here is not the same an irrigation for rice and then for oil palm tree. Because in this way it's good and that helps for the rice, but in this case it's I will use just a term, it's like agricultural suicide, because the oil palm tree, this can be is so susceptible for an irrigation system like this, especially for Phytophthora that creates multiple diseases in the plant, and it's just not a good idea. So in this way, this is why it's so important to be having this information, to be reading about the crops, to be reading about all this, and in this way, this is gonna make a better decision. This is gonna bring enough information for us to make the correct and the right decision about our garden, and be protecting our crops, and being protecting our crops, just preventing just before something start happening. And so something that, like, the last thing about this irrigation system optimization is just check the plant susceptibility. Usually we used to read before planting, we used to read about the nutrient requirements, the probably what it needs, about temperature, about fertilizer, about everything. But we don't check about what can be affecting our plants. So the plant susceptibility is something that I highly recommend before start planting, before start rotating the crops with a different or even new ones, like the new garden with new species. So we're on time. So we have a couple minutes for last round of questions, if we have some questions so far.
As far as irrigation goes here, even with my raised beds, it's challenging to get a system hooked up that doesn't take a lot of time and isn't, so I use the drip tape that you can get, at any home and garden store. And it's still a pain in the neck. So, sometimes it bursts and then you have to repair it. Is there something good for a homeowner to use that would, you could put on a timer or anything, or is anything that's going to be drip tape, micro irrigation related going to be expensive and all that?
Well, now with all the technology that we have, there is like micro irrigators for even the indoors crops. But in the one that you have, it's one of the best options, the best ones. But the thing is, with these systems, they are the best one, but in the same way they need some management. Is sometimes they can be just a little particle of something. It can be just a problem with the system. And even with the big farms, it's even tricky when there is an obstacle or something is blocking the water in some of the houses, and like, where is that? So when it's high technology, well, they don't know exactly what part of the farm is, what is the irrigator that is damaged, and just buying new accessories or repairs. And this is not so far we have like something perfect to develop, and when it's that perfect, it's expensive, and this needs the management. So when it's on budget, even we have some like handmade irrigators. They just I'm forgetting the word of these things that they use on the hospitals to put
Like an IV?
the IV, for example.
Mhm.
So something like this when it's on budget, and just hanging the IV and with the drops, and it's cheaper just to replace the little hose in case
Mhm.
that it get blocked. So yeah, I didn't just went into the different types of irrigators, because there is just about mentioning, yeah, but just about the drop size. There
Yep.
is a whole seminar that can be about 2 hours talking
Yeah.
about the drop size, the water drop size, and how is the perfect way, and the different irrigators that can provide multiple and different drop size and the pressure and everything. So each one of these topics, this can have perfectly 2 or 3 hours talking about specifically each one. This is why it's this challenge about talking about everything. And this
Short
is
time.
why if you have, so this is, why it's not changing. So to go deep into some of these topics, and so through webinars or in person training sessions. So this is the information. So you can every time just go to the cooperative extension office. We have the team to be just developing all this, because it's a lot. There is a whole world of information out there about agriculture, about animals, about nutrition, about everything. So for more topics, concerns, ideas, everything, assistance. So this is the information where you can reach out anytime.
That's a good resource, Jeff. Thank you. It I truly have never seen it before.
I didn't know if that was even gonna be a thing, but leave it to Amazon.
Evidently it is. Nikki, how are you irrigating or watering your plants in your greenhouse?
With a hose.
Okay, so just handheld?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just do the soil.
Yes, good call.
So
And I have done that in the past, even either hose or watering can. And I think it's also very deceiving when you wet the soil to think that you've gotten enough water to
Mhm.
reach the roots.
I know you have to stick your finger in.
You guys
It's like
stick your
going
finger in and
down.
realize that you
Yeah.
didn't do a darn
I've
thing.
been Googling.
Yeah.
It's exploding. So I'm starting now to get a little nervous about what to do next, you know. Like
Yeah.
spinach just took off now. Do you do anything with it? Do you just I haven't Googled spinach yet.
Well, the warm weather is going to make it bolt, which is when it's going to get bitter.
Yeah.
It's going to shoot up these shoots that the flowers are going to be on.
Yeah.
So just harvest it and start again in the fall.
Okay.
Harvest it and eat it.
Okay.
You have too much in it?
No, it's just starting to grow. It wasn't growing very well, and it just started
okay.
growing. So I just don't I guess I don't understand the plant yet.
Mhm.
Like, do I cut off the top? Do I is there any of that stuff going on with spinach?
To my knowledge, you just pull off the
Let it
leaves
go?
like you would lettuce.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And you have a long way. So we have
Okay.
years reading and practicing and research and experiments and a lot of things about agriculture, and every time, every day, always there is something new to learn. Like I said, always there is not like a absolute truth that do this and okay, that it's gonna work, and everything is a constant evolution. So this is what is great to be just keeping in touch and learning every time about something and updating our knowledge, our experience. So thank you very much for being here to participate and being here in this second session. Next session is next Thursday, and we're gonna see about how to protect our crops from wild animals. That this is another challenge sometimes, because when if it's challenging to control something small like insects, so it's even sometimes a huge challenge when there is something that can just show up at some point to our garden, to our crops, and we don't know like what to do. It's not that easy, like just
Woodchucks.
spraying something and that's it.
I just had a chipmunk eat all my sunflower seeds. He dug them all up and ate them all.
You might have a greenhouse because it's just insane. They're just everywhere.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, look at this. There's no controlling any of that.
yeah.
Even in a small yard, the animals love to take over. Thank you, Christian, too.
So we'll see you next
I'll
week.
be at the farmer's market, so I don't know if I can get on or not. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the weather and enjoy the weekend. So
Great. Thank you, Christian.
thank you very much.
Bye-bye.